everyone, and a warm welcome to this special edition of Energy Frontiers. I am Justina Okechukwu. The 2022 edition of the African Energy Week held in Cape Town, South Africa this week was a grand event in every respect. From the biggest names in the global oil and gas industry to the biggest issues in the world of energy and big deals and agreements that were signed. Let's give you a bit of a highlight into this package. The biggest gathering of energy stakeholders and policymakers on the continent was designed to discuss the various aspects of exploration, collaboration, utilization of Africa's energy resources, as well as scaling up investments and energy security across the continent's energy landscape. Speaking on driving energy investments towards a sustainable future and the role of OPEC as an important source for energy security, the Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, Haitham Al-Ghaz, provided key insights into the organization's strategies for driving stability across Africa and the role of the recent declaration of cooperation plays in improving stability. He also announced the launch of the flagship publication of the OPEC World Oil Outlook, which provides a detailed overview for the long-term forecast for global energy markets. The OPEC chief revealed that demand for energy will continue to rise, while oil will retain its lion's share of the energy mix by 2025, with the combined share for oil and gas expected to remain above 50% by the year 2025. But the chief host of the grand event was MJ Ayuk, the executive chairman of the African Energy Chamber. In his welcome address, Ayuk asked African leaders and energy stakeholders to be the drivers of a new future for the continent. This was an excerpt.
This is our chance, and we have a rare moment to lift ourselves up and live that true meaning of our own creed and say, our time is now. Our time is now. This industry, an industry that's driven human civilization, energy has moved things around the world. And at a time and a critical moment where our industry, this energy industry, has been the industry that's been the most derided, the most attacked, and the most maligned, it's not time to turn our backs on those energy producers. I'll tell you something. At a time when it's so hard to be called an oil man, at a time when it's so hard to be called a gas man, at a time when some people are even ashamed to talk about the working energy, we need to be proud. Be proud that during COVID-19, we stood up and gave this industry some hope. Be proud that during COVID-19, we drove that energy, that moved medicines, vaccines from around the world. But bigger thing, be proud that this industry and these energy workers from the Gulf Coast, in the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of Guinea, from the Middle East to the shanty towns around Luanda or the new cities coming around Dakar, they continue to move. When some in different places say this is an industry or a department, as some call us, that is of the past, I tell you, we're not done yet.
Coming up after the break, we have more in the package from the high-profile event. This is Energy Frontiers. Welcome back to the program. One of the high points of the African Energy Week Summit, it was a historic agreement or a memorandum of understanding inked between the African Energy Chamber and the African Export-Import Bank. The agreement looks to enhance private sector investments across Africa's oil and gas industry, which will be galvanized by Afreximbank. In the meantime, the head of Afreximbank, Professor Benedict Orama, address the big issue of climate change ahead of the COP27 summit in Egypt next month.
Second, we must proactively and collectively intensify our efforts to implement the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, as it is a clear path to mitigating carbon emissions while sustaining lives and livelihoods. We must also support the creation of the African Energy Transition Bank so that the continent can take control of its own future, enabling a dual approach whereby a Afrexim Bank expands green energy investments for the future, but the Energy Bank supports today's needs and a just transition. Finally, we must back the African Energy Chamber so that it can intensify its thought leadership on this subject and ensure that Africa's voice is heard as loudly as possible on issues that matter to us regarding energy.
South Africa, the home and the host country of the African Energy Week, is currently going through a rough patch in its energy sector. Addressing the gathering on the country's load shedding and energy poverty in Africa was the Mineral Resources and Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe. Here is an excerpt of the minister's address.
Africans are suffering from energy poverty, and this has been the case for too long that we tend to forget that energy poverty is an anomaly. We must turn this anomaly around. Africa must no longer wait. Changing this abnormality requires greater level of commitment than ever before. For Africa's future depends on it. The time has come for Africans to no longer be content with small ambitions on energy. We must all rise and do more, do so with vigor, agility, and scale. I always describe this as a leadership issue, more than a resource issue. It's a leadership issue. Leadership in the continent must take this responsibility and drive it. We need clarity of thought as a continent. We need determination, and we need courage. Now, many people always talk to me about this thing of courage. What is this courage of yours? And I always explain that courage doesn't mean you never get visited by fear. That's not what courage is. It means even if you get cold feet, you fear, it is about confronting that fear and overcome it. And leadership in the continent must commit itself to the clarity of thinking, to determination, to be determined to do what we can do, and the courage to do what we are called upon to do. Our indictment as leaders on this continent is to create new energy normalcy. And let us have a new deal on energy in Africa, a new deal that is people-centered and guaranteed continental economic growth, development, industrialization.
There's more from energy policy makers and others when the show returns. This is Energy Frontiers. Thanks for staying with us on the show. Now, developing countries, many of which are on the continent, are the most impacted by the negative effects of the global energy crisis. The Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Mary Boswallick, spoke on this. Take a listen.
In fact, according to IEA estimates, the number of people without access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa has unfortunately increased by 4%, or 25 million people, between 2019 and 2021. And this is all the more striking when we consider that it reverses what had been a positive trend of steady progress obtained between the years 2013 and 2019. So this message that we heard at the very beginning of this program, I think really resonates and is so important in terms of our attention and priorities, making energy poverty history by 2030. Today, 600 million people, as has already been mentioned, or 43% of the entire population of the African continent, still lack access to electricity. And nearly 1 billion lack access to clean cooking. And these are really staggering and sobering figures.
Hope you enjoyed the package. Remember to follow the show on Frontier Africa Reports website and across all our social media handles as indicated on the screen. Meanwhile, delegates at the African Energy Week were treated to the rich South African cultural performance Let me leave you now with clips from the performance. I am Justina Okechukwu. Bye for now.
We move night and day. When the sun sets, we move cautiously. There is no electricity. How can this be? We move. A family in a village in South Africa. Gogo is sick. Her last breath. Someone call the ambulance. We can't. The phone is dead. We move. Seated around a fire. It's bitter cold. The night takes us into her dreams. We wake, a raging fire, taking every last breath. She moves through the dusty parts of Niger, studying every last word in a book before the sun sets. He moves knowing that the beat of his fist is covered by shadows in the pitch black night. And so I ask you, how can this be? We move from city to town, from town to village, from place to place. It's just the same. It can be for just parts of the day or no energy day after day. And so we sit and we dream and we hope for better days. Days that will turn into nights where our rooms will have lights, where reading in the sun becomes studying at night, and where we can gather together without fear of fiery fights. We move to rooms just like this, where we talk and we plan, but what manifests is just a piece of paper with words and no action planned. And so I ask you, time and time again, how can this be? You are the key, the changes, the makers, the opportunity takers. And so move your words into actions, your ideas into light makers, and be the source that illuminates our continent. This is the start of the energy movement. You see, with words of power, you can make energy poverty history by 2030. From the Cape to Cairo, from Dakar to Nairobi. Let us march into battle with our eyes set on the future. This is the energy movement, and we are the warriors that have the power to change Africa, bringing light into each and every home. So let our heartbeats fuel the possibility for light, a light that will explode into a community of leaders. So join the energy movement and secure the future not only for our children, but for generations to come. The responsibility lies with us. So collaborate, motivate, inspire, and drive the change that will take Africa into a shining beacon so that she may provide safe passage to every single woman, man, and child. Shout, scream, and let it be known that we will move through this continent like an electrical shock that will bring us into a future of light bursting at the seams. So rise, raise your hands as we fight for energy. Take flight and let your power be seen. Join the energy movement. Rise!